You are listening to Christian America Ministries Worldwide, a weekly shortwave radio program and online podcast dedicated to uncensored, politically incorrect biblical teaching. Each week, your host, Matthew Dyer, and sometimes a guest, discuss an important topic and shed the light of Scripture upon it. To learn more about Christian America Ministries, visit our website, ChristianAmericaMinistries.org. And now, the broadcast.
America, America, is it too late to save you? Will foreign troops invade your soil? Will government enslave you? Will the greatness that was once your crown be trampled in the streets? Oh, America, don't let your name go down in such defeat. America, America, the tide is rising fast. Don't you think it's time now to remember your great past? America, America, now the tide can still be turned. Just open up your eyes and see the lesson to be learned. America, America, once God's word was your standard. How gradually you've compromised, how far you finally wandered. For the years of silent apathy, to God we now repent. For the years of work we might have done, that's already now been spent. America, America, the tide is rising fast. Don't you think it's time now to remember your great past? America, America, now the tide can still be turned. Just open up your eyes and see the lesson to be learned. America, this land needs Jesus now. If he's confined within the church, its walls will crumble down. We must awake, we must arise for his kingdom to secure. We know the battle has been won, yes, the victory is sure. America, America, the tide is rising fast. Now don't you think it's time now to remember your great past? America, America, now the tide can still be turned. Just open up your eyes and see the lesson to be learned. Just open up your eyes and see the lesson to be learned. Just open up your eyes and see the lesson to be learned. You better just open up your eyes and see the lesson to be learned. Open up your eyes and see the lesson to be learned. Oh, just open up your eyes and see the lesson to be learned.
Greetings to the once lost but now found sheep of the house of Israel. You are listening to Christian America Ministries Worldwide. I'm your host, Matthew Dyer, and we are broadcasting around the world on shortwave radio and over the internet at our YouTube channel, Christian America Ministries, over on YouTube. We're also on Spotify as well. And if you are listening to us on shortwave radio this evening, please consider sending in a reception report. You can do that by going to our website, christianamericaministries.org. And there's a little radio icon there at the right hand of the home page. You click on that, send in a report. If you give us your mailing address, we'll send you a free book that this ministry publishes as a thank you. And we'll also send you a shortwave radio QSL card as well. I printed up a bunch of them this last week and sent out a whole pile of them to people that had sent in reception reports here lately. So if you did send in a QSL with your address, that will be on the way here before too long. And I'm really happy with some of the reports that I've been hearing on the shortwave radio reception reports. We've been hearing from people from the UK, Hawaii, Canada, all the lower 48s. States, I mean, just all over the place, and that is awesome. The radio ministry seems to be growing at the moment. We're getting a lot of people listening, and we want to continue that and do what we can to be good stewards of the outreach program that we have out on the radio. So, and do that as long as the Lord wants us to do it, and see where it goes. So we're very happy. I'm very happy to be able to do that. And also, thank you to my radio audience out there on the internet as well. This is not just a radio show, but it's a podcast. And thank you all for tuning in. In this broadcast, we're going to be talking about the Charlie Kirk assassination that happened last week. Right before the broadcast aired last weekend, and it was just a day or so after the assassination, I thought about coming out and recording another broadcast. I already had the broadcast for last week done. But I thought about coming out and recording a broadcast and talking about the whole incident that has really got people's attention here in America, and I guess the whole world. And to be honest, I was still processing the whole event and everything that happened, and I wanted to kind of sit back and wait, because I do not like to jump in, and especially with current events and things like that, I don't like to jump in like so many people out there do and start making claims and saying things right out of the gate when everything's happening, because often those people, they are made fools a week later, but most people have very short memory, so they just forget about it. But I don't want to be that way. I wanted to think about it and kind of process it. And there is a lot of emotionalism going on right now within Christianity, and rightly so. Rightly so. What happened was absolutely tragic. But when Christians get overly emotional during a time like this, it can be a very good thing, and it can drive people, and I think it is driving people. It is waking some people up to their slumber, and we're going to talk about that in this broadcast. Which is a good thing. It shook them awake, and they're awake for maybe a short amount of time, hopefully not. But if they are not careful, Christians, if they are not careful, it is also very easy for them to be misled during a very emotional state. And in the world we live in today, with mass media and social media, it is so easy for Christians to be taken advantage of during an emotional state like that, for people to take advantage of the situation and use it to control the masses. And I'm not necessarily just talking about large media also. I mean, there's other people on X and Facebook and YouTube that are using this event and the emotions are revolved around the event to gain money, to gain supporters and followers and subscribers or whatever. And quite frankly, to me, it's quite disgusting by some of the things that I've seen people doing. One guy, I listened to the podcast, this was the day of the assassination. He did an entire podcast on the event, and this was before they'd even announced that Charlie had died. And he made a large portion of the broadcast or the podcast all about himself and how he had been sticking his neck out and speaking on these things, and newspaper had written an article about him, and now he's getting death threats. So therefore, since I'm doing this, they could shoot me next. So you, his listeners, need to send him money. And he made the point several times, even at the end of the podcast, letting his audience know that he was a 501c3 organization, so therefore they need to send money and be his shield bearer while he swings the sword. In the same breath, talking about this guy that just got assassinated and using the emotions from that to drive his own ministry. Was he being malicious about it? I don't know, but that's how it came across to me. And there's a lot of people doing that, especially over on X, which just seems to be a dumpster fire every time I turn it on. And I get on X maybe once a week, and I've gotten on it a little bit more this week, but it seems like, at least the circles that I follow, it's just a bunch of preachers fighting back and forth with one another over this, that, or the other, and it's just kind of ridiculous. But what happened last week, before I get on a rabbit trail, was terrible on so many different levels. But I do believe what happened is a sign of the times, so to speak. And I was thinking last week that, my generation, and I'd say a good many of those listening to this podcast and broadcast are of my generation, at least a good many of you. I'm in my 30s. But we're entering a different time period because political assassinations is something that my generation has not really ever had to deal with, major ones. The last major political assassinations were in the 1960s. Yes, there's been some smaller ones, but major ones. And even though this Charlie Kirk fellow wasn't a politician, it was a political assassination of sorts. And then, back then, they did not have the technology that we do today where an assassination can take place and then be broadcasted over a text message with a video all over the world within just a few seconds, which is something new. That's not something that really has taken place. For example, the Charlie Kirk assassination, I had got a video text to me, like a few minutes after it happened, and it was just a 30-second video, and I clicked on it and didn't even realize what it was, and it was over, and I watched it. And now, that is something different than, the 1960s, where, yes, there is video of JFK being assassinated, but it's nothing like we have today. Now, personally, I didn't know much about Charlie Kirk until this past week. I had watched some of his videos over the past couple of years. Really good videos where he's going to these colleges and he's debating these leftist liberals and these homosexual trannies and so many different people. And they're really enjoyable to watch and watch him interact with these people. And I'd watched him over the years, but I didn't listen to his podcast weekly or anything like that. But I really appreciated the gift he had to be able to retain so much knowledge and spit it back out at his opponents in an open-air debate without preparation, all while keeping his cool in the middle of a heated debate, debating a lot of times a retrobate. Is a very good trait and very good thing to be able to emulate, because there's a lot we can learn from that. It was a very effective tool. A lot of people learn a lot from it. In fact, I've listened to more of his little debates this past week than I ever had before. I really enjoyed them, and there's a lot that we can learn from them. And as many of you all know, Charlie Kirk was famous for going head-to-head with these transgender leftists, pro-abortion, anti-Christian, pro-communist activists, if you want to call them that, in a open-air forum, which is great. It's a great thing. We need more men like that, being able to stand up and have the spine enough to be able to express what they believe, and the spine enough to know what they believe. There's a lot of men out there, and women, that do not know what they believe. They don't know what they believe. They don't know how to defend it because they've never engaged their brain long enough to be able to do that. So watching him do it is quite refreshing. Now, I did not follow him closely over the years, like I said, and I did know that he was a professing Christian, which is good because of the many things that he opposed. I agreed with him on a long list of them. And which is great. But I also knew he identified himself as a Judeo-Christian and was a big Zionist who encouraged Christians to support the Jews and in the state of Israel as a biblical command, which for me was a big turnoff when I listened to some of his things. So that's one reason why I didn't follow him very closely, because being a Zionist at the same time as being a professing Christian are both opposed to one another. They are not compatible. And that was one thing that I did not like about him over the years, listening to him the few times I did, off and on, as I come across his videos, is he was a pro-Zionist. He was considered himself Judeo-Christian. And, my late pastor, Pastor Peter J. Peters, he used to say very bluntly concerning Judeo-Christianity, is Judeo-Christianity is like a virgin whore. Now, that may be a little blunt for you out there, but it's true. It's an impossibility. It doesn't work. And with Charlie Kirk's view of Israel and Zionism, it really put a bitter taste in my mouth. And as many of you can imagine, if someone stands up and says they are against all these things that are ungodly and terrible and sins, yet at the same time are in support of an ungodly nation and people like the Jews that are doing a lot of those things and for a lot of those things, there are two opposites opposed at that point. And we need to be very careful not to have two afflicting thoughts in our mind at the same time. That is not good. And we have scriptures like 2 Chronicles 19:2 that come to mind when you're dealing with things like the state of Israel and the Jews. And I don't read that passage here. 2 Chronicles 19:2 says this, "And Jehu, the son of Hanani the seer, went out to meet him and said to King Jehoshaphat, Shouldest thou help the ungodly and love them that hate the Lord? And therefore is wrath upon thee from before the Lord?" End quote. Now, if you support the state of Israel, if you support the Jews unconditionally, like as a quote Judeo-Christian, which there is no such thing, you are bringing wrath upon yourself from the Lord. And we've done that as a nation here in America since we've supported the state of Israel. We have, I'm not going to go down the list, but I think you all can fill it in. We have more curses in America than blessings since the 1940s when we started supporting the state of Israel, sending them billions and billions of dollars and fighting their wars for them. That is not a good thing. We have not been blessed. We have been cursed. Now, this section in the broadcast, I want to play a few clips from Charlie Kirk and his point of view on the topic of Judaism, the Talmud, and the Jews. Now, these clips are from a video posted about 4 months ago. I'm not sure when the video was recorded, but it was posted on YouTube about 4 months ago, titled, on Charlie Kirk's YouTube channel, titled Charlie Debates Veteran on Holocaust, 9/11, and the, quote, Jew World Order, end quote. Now, before I play these clips, I want to point out that Charlie is responding to a man that, although he says a lot of things that I believe are true, not everything, but a lot of it, and there's small bits of truth to them, the man clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know his subject very well, and he's coming off, and you see this in the video a little bit more, and even in clips that I'm not going to be able to play here on the program, the larger portion of the clip. He's coming off in a way that makes him sound a little insane, and by his responses. I mean, he, although some of the things that he is saying is true, he's coming off in a way that makes him sound totally unreliable and totally like a source that you would not want to listen to. I mean, the guy, he gave me some vibes in the video that, I mean, if I had asked him for directions on the side of the road and he told me in the way that he had responded, I would not have trusted those directions very well. And that's something important to know when you're presenting things to people, that you need to do it in an intelligent, clear, and loving way. And what I mean by loving, you don't dump things on people, all in force, because it's too much for them to even respond or process. And it just becomes a giant pile of stuff that makes you look like an idiot in a YouTube video. And that is something that we can learn from some of these clips I'm going to play for you here. Now, one thing I do want to say to those out there listening, this isn't a broadcast bashing Charlie Kirk's views. So some of you may be thinking about turning it off, thinking that I'm just going to give him a hard time. I am going to examine some of his thoughts and work into something else that I think is important to point out. So just bear with me in this broadcast as we listen to these clips. I'm going to go ahead and play the first one for you. That is a snippet out of that video.
I think that what you're doing is amazing, trying to get people to wake up. But here's where I start to kind of question you. You're very for Israel, and I totally understand why from a surface sense, from a biblical sense. But as a Christian man who is about to have a little girl in October, here's my problem. In the Talmud, they talk about sexual intercourse with the little girl is permitted if she is under 3 years of age. You can arrest a non-Jew woman and it is legal. And as a Christian, I mean, you look at our government, it's been infiltrated by the Jews. The founders of pornography are Jewish. The founders of transgender movement and the LGBT community are Jewish. That's exactly what was going on in Germany. I'm not excusing what Hitler did, but there's more to it. And so as a Christian, what is your biblical perspective to supporting a group of people that are promoting satanic acts and are excusing satanic behavior?
There's a lot there. First, tell me what the Talmud is.
So the Talmud, I believe, is like a set of rules that it's kind of like our 10 Commandments, but on a bigger sense.
No, it's not that. So the Talmud would be to the Federalist Papers to the Constitution. So do you know what the Torah is?
Yeah, the Torah is like the Old Testament, like what
Close.
they
Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy.
It's their version of the Bible.
Yeah. Well, that Tanakh is their version. It's actually our version. We have an indecipherable Old Testament. So let me just kind of give you a little bit overview, and then we'll talk about the Talmud. So the Torah is the most holy text in Judaism, which is indistinguishable from that as Christians. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. It's the 5 books of Moses, otherwise known as the Pentateuch. Then there is the Tanakh, which includes the book of Joshua, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. It also includes Psalms and Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Songs of Solomon, right, so on and so forth. Nehemiah, Jeremiah, Esther's. Okay, so that makes up the Old Testament, or they would call the Tanakh, which is basically Torah, Nephilim, and Kvetchim. Okay, then there's the Talmud. The Talmud is interpretation of the Torah and of the Tanakh. It is basically rabbis arguing back and forth. I don't know about those specific verses. People that are in Orthodox Judaism say that is not true. I don't know. They'll have to refute and respond to that. I'm not a master of the Talmud. I do know the Torah very, very well. And I can tell you right now, nowhere in the Torah does it say anything that you just described or articulated.
All right, so this man talking to Charlie Kirk at one of his debates, he's right. Charlie should not be, as a Christian, be supporting the Jews and Judaism because of what they teach is opposed to Christianity. The first problem with this clip is that the man talking to Charlie doesn't know his subject matter very much, and that really doesn't help him. He doesn't even know exactly what the Talmud is. He was right, though. I mean, he was right with what he said, that the Jews do view the Talmud as their Bible. If we want to simplify it, that is true. But he didn't even know exactly what it was. And Charlie is right that what the man quoted from the Talmud cannot be found anywhere in the Bible or the Torah. In fact, there is laws against exactly what is found in the Talmud. So for those that don't know, the Talmud is a collection of different books and writings over a long period of time that were basically oral traditions put in writing. And in the Bible, when you read Jesus opposing the thing called the tradition of the elders, that eventually formed into what is known as the Talmud today in writing. It was codified later on in history. And it is a collection of rabbinical writings where different rabbis are basically arguing back and forth on their different interpretations of this oral tradition, which they believe was handed down, in the way they present it, handed down to Moses and was passed on to them through oral tradition. And then you have the written tradition, which would have been God's laws, how they view it. And to understand more of how the Jews view the Talmud, let me read you a few quotes from Jews. Now, the first one is from Rabbi Morris Normer Ketzer, Kertzer, who was the director of the Interreligious Activities for the American Jewish Committee. And this is what he said concerning the Talmud. Quote, "The Talmud consists of 63 books of legal, ethical, and historical writings of the ancient rabbis. It was edited 5 centuries after the birth of Jesus. It is a commendum of law and lore. It is the legal code which forms the basis of Jewish religious law, and it is the textbook used in the training of rabbis." End quote. Now, another quote. "In the book Rome and Jerusalem, the Jew Moses Hess affirmed the Jews' dependence upon the Talmud." This is what he said. Quote, "The Talmud on which the whole present-day Jewish orthodoxy leans." End quote. Basically speaking of Judaism. The Rabbi Eleazar Bervoketz brags on the Talmud's influence upon modern-day Judaism in his book Towards Historic Judaism. This is what he said, quote, "Our Judaism, as we know it today, is based on the Talmud. It is a wonderful, vivid record of religious, cultural, and social life of the entire Jewish nation, covering a period of at least 7 centuries. There is every reason for a Jew to take pride in this great creation of his nation." End quote. Now, I could spend an entire radio broadcast reading you hundreds of quotes like this from Jewish sources to affirm that the Talmud is their, to simplify it, their holy book, their Bible, and what they think about it. And they view it very highly. But I'm not going to do that. You can go look into it. One book I would recommend is The Plot Against Christianity by Elizabeth Dilling. That's a good book. And there's hundreds of others. Another one is Ted Weiland's book, God's Covenant People, Yesterday, Today, and Forever, which he talks in that book not just about the identity of the modern-day Jewish people, but also their writings and who true Israel is today. So those are just 2 books off the top of my head that I would recommend that you can look into. And there's plenty. Now, Elizabeth Dilling wasn't Jewish, but there's plenty of Jewish writings that are that have come out against the Talmud and Judaism. Now, in this video, the man is referring to a passage in the Talmud concerning the sexual assault, and I say that in a way that we don't get flagged here on YouTube, but a sexual assault of a 3-year-old girl. Now, he is referring to a passage in the Talmud from Ketzabot 11b6, so 11b verse 6. Now, I'm going to read you the passage that he is referring to. Now, if you have young children in the room, you may want to turn it off. I don't like to read this kind of stuff on the radio, but I'm going to do it just for clarity's sake to give you an idea of what this man is trying to convey. So this would be the time. If you want to turn off the radio or whatever, I would do it. This quote is what this man was speaking about to Charlie Kirk. This is what it says, quote, "Rava said that this is what the Mishnah is saying. An adult man who engaged in intercourse with a minor girl less than 3 years old has done nothing, as intercourse with a girl less than 3 years old is tantamount to poking a finger into the eye. In the case of an eye, after a tear falls from it, another tear forms to replace it. Similarly, the ruptured hymen of a girl younger than 3 is restored, and a young boy who engaged in intercourse with an adult woman renders her as one whose hymen was ruptured by wood. And with regard to the case of a woman whose hymen was ruptured by wood itself, there is a dispute between Rabbi Mira, and Rabbi Mira maintains that her marriage contract is 200 dinars, and rabbis maintain that it is 100 dinars." End quote. Now, you will find Jews and pro-Jew people on the internet and through history try to explain passages like this away as a misunderstanding or taking it out of context. And I've watched several videos. Some, quote, Messianic Jews for Jesus people, I've watched some of their videos where they defend the Talmud on verses like this away, and they say that it is being taken out of context. And this is not the most vile thing in the Talmud. It is a disgusting book, and it deserves to be burned. And you know what? It has happened through history. The Talmud has been convicted, tried and convicted and destroyed in some countries. Let me tell you one instance, just one. In 1242 AD in France, King Louis IX put the Talmud on trial. He put the book on trial because a Jewish convert to Christianity translated it into their language and brought a list of 35 charges against the Talmud to Pope Gregory IX by quoting a series of quotes from this book about Jesus, Mary, Christianity, sinful acts, a long list of things. So the king said, okay, this stuff is terrible. We didn't know this stuff was written down in these books. And there was 4 Jewish rabbis that were appointed to defend the Talmud, and they lost. And on June 17th, 1242 AD, they loaded up 24 carts of Jewish writings and Talmuds, and they took them out and they burned them. In accordance to, if you read Acts 19:19, that's what they were doing. That's where they got the idea. If you want to say that was the wrong thing to do, they should have kept it for cultural reasons. No, they should have went out and burned them and destroyed them. And you know what? That's what they did. And it's something we should do again. Let's play the next clip.
So you asked the question, why should we care about Jews? And I will address the other specific points. We are called to bless the Jews as Christians. In fact, you are a Christian, right?
I am, but
what religion was Jesus?
He was Hebrew. He was not the modern.
He was Jewish.
He was not Jewish. He was Hebrew.
Well, hold on. He was from Judea, wasn't he?
Correct, but Jews didn't exist at that time.
Well, hold on.
The modern Jews are not the true chosen people of Yah. They created their own country in the 1940s. They established, this is their doctrine, the Yebahamath 11b. That the little girl is permitted if she is 3 years of age. Charlie, as a man of Yah, how can you justify and defend a group of people?
I don't justify that. That's disgusting.
But you're supporting them.
No, time out. I will say, though, that I've never met a single Jew that believes that or understands it. I encourage you to find a rabbi and confront him with that.
They have videos all over the internet.
No, yeah, it's not nothing false is ever on the internet, right? But I encourage you.
It's live interviews.
No, I encourage you to go to a rabbi and ask him that very specific question. But let me ask you, when it says very clearly, when Paul says that we should bless the keepers of the law, which is the Hebrews, do you believe that?
I do.
Okay, so
the modern day Jews are not the original Hebrews.
Now, for those that don't know, there is not one scripture in the Bible, not one scripture in the Bible that tells Christians they are to bless the Jews or the keepers of the law. There is not one scripture in the Bible that commands Christians to bless the Jews. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. This has been a lie fed to us by those who would like to be blessed. And they have been blessed financially for a very long time. The United States government sends billions of dollars to the Israeli state, and that's not including the billions of dollars that stupid Judeo-Christian churches sends to the Middle East. That is not accounted for. I mean, there's no record of that because they're tax-exempt organizations and they send money over there to the land of Israel, so there's no record of it. At least with the United States government, for the most part, if we trust it, there is a record of how much money we send over there, and it's a very, very big pile of money. Now, as I read from 2 Chronicles 19:2, we are called not to bless those who hate the Lord. Judaism is a religion opposed to Christianity. They hate Christianity. They hate Christians. They are opposed to our God. Jesus was not a Jew in the religious sense like he wants to try to spin in this clip. Biblically, there is a difference between a Judahite who was a descendant from the tribe of Judah. Let me say that again. Biblically, there is a difference between a Judahite who was a descendant from the tribe of Judah and an Israelite who lived as a resident in the nation of Judah, or would later be the land of Judea after the Babylonian captivity and then the Roman occupation. than the modern-day Jews today and the religion that they follow. They're all totally different things. Now, a Judahite was a descendant from the tribe of Judah. He was an Israelite who was descendant from Judah in the tribe of Judah. That is what the first Judahite would have been. And then, you had the split of the nations, the nation of Israel and the nation of Judah. And the nation of Judah was made up of Benjamin and Levi and people of Judah. And those would have been known as Judahites by nation. But you could have had a Benjamite like Paul who lived there, and he was technically a Judahite, or would later be called a Jew later on. Shortened, it should be Judahite or Judean in the New Testament. The word Jude shouldn't appear, but regardless, that's what it means. And that would have been a resident Israelite in that nation. That doesn't necessarily mean they were a Judahite, but they were of the nation of Judah. And then later on, you had the Roman occupation after the Babylonian captivity, where the land of Judea was a region of land controlled by the Roman Empire, and if you lived in that land, you could have been considered a Judahite or a Jew by region if you were born and lived in that land. Then, after that, you had the religion of the Jews develop, which is something we'll have to do a whole other broadcast on, because you have a lot of different history in dealing with the development of what we call Judaism today that has come up. And the people today called Jews are not the same as the people in the Bible who are Judahites or Judeans. They're not the same people. In fact, the Jews of today are closely descendant of Canaanites and Edomites. They are not Israelites. So this word Jew is very confusing, because he's using the word Jew to say that Jesus was a rabbi with a little pointy hat and looks like the Jews of today and was teaching like the Jews of today, is what he's saying. And that's just not the case. And this is something that this ministry has been preaching for a while, and we've done many times. And if you want to learn more about this, and you're interested in learning more on the Jews or who true Israel is today, I would recommend you go to our YouTube channel. And last December, we did an online Bible conference which we aired on YouTube in December, on who true Israel is today. And I had over 11 pastors and teachers on that online Bible conference present you messages free for the taking, right up there for anyone to watch on this subject. Now, I would recommend you to go watch that. Spoiler alert, the Jews aren't Israel. So if you want to learn more, please go watch that. It is many, many hours of teaching from different people, from different perspectives, all with the same conclusion on this. So, and I've also done messages on the Jew as well. One message I preached, I think it was last summer, called The Curious Case of the Word Jew. It's a pretty short message, but it's a good starter, good primer on this subject that I would recommend you go listen to. But Jesus was a Judahite. He was not an adherent of the religion of Judaism that we see today. They are not the same. Now, in this next clip I'm going to play, Charlie Kirk tries to plead to this man after he ranted about the Jews for a while that Jesus was a Jew and he kept the laws of God. Let's play the clip.
So let me just make sure I understand. So Jesus Christ, who himself was a Hebraic, Torah-observant, Shabbat-observant Jew, or whatever you want to call it, right? Because Jew just means you're from Judea. That's all it means, okay? You know that, right?
Yeah.
That's where it comes from. Tribe of Judah, then formed Judea. Jew comes from Judea. Jesus Christ himself honored the law. Does that mean anything to you?
It does. So if we're going to say that Jesus honored the law, how is justifying
And the keepers of the law
of a child under 3 years
because
old?
that's not the Talmud is not the law.
That is what they preach in Israel. They preach in their schools. They talk about it openly.
I encourage you to find me a singular instance of somebody in Israel talking about the legitimate of 3-year-olds. That doesn't exist.
Okay, this clip is a perfect example of why the word Jew is so confusing. It can mean someone from the tribe of Judah, which Jesus was from the tribe of Judah. It can mean someone living in Judea, which Jesus did. And in modern times, it can mean a modern Jew practicing the religion of Judaism. And, Charlie Kirk points out here that Jesus he was a descendant from the tribe of Judah, and he lived in Judea, and that makes him, in his words, a Jew, a Judahite. But at the same time, he's also trying to say that he adhered to the religion of the Jews, which isn't true. So there's some, as we see in this short clip, there's morphing of meanings, and they're mixing together, and you can't do that. There's differences in all these. The religion of Judaism today is not ancient Israelitism, if you want to call it that. It's not. It's opposed to that. But Charlie's right, though, that Jesus was from the tribe of Judah, and he adhered to God's law, or the Torah, which, for those that don't know, Torah is Hebrew for law. And by that law that Jesus adhered to, he would not have been in support of a people who hated God, hated Christianity like today's modern Jews do. These are conflicting thoughts. They do not go together. In fact, if you read the New Testament, Jesus opposed the Pharisees who adhered to the tradition of the elders, which turned into what we know today as the Talmud. Now, the man talking to Charlie is right. God's law is opposed to the teachings of the Talmud. And the modern-day Jews do adhere to those teachings in the Talmud. Now, I read you the quote from the Talmud that he is referring to, the man speaking to him. And Orthodox Judaism, Jews that practice orthodoxy in their religion, teach from the Talmud like Christianity teaches from the Bible. Now, Orthodox Jews study and adhere to the Talmudic teaching. This is no secret. You can look it up. There's nothing, this isn't some secret knowledge. They even have studying programs for studying the Talmud, much like Christians do with studying the Bible. And this is one you can look up. You can Google it. It's DAF Yomi, DAF space YOMI program, which what it means is in Yiddish, a page a day, where Jews read a page of the Talmud each day. And by doing that, they are able to read the entire Talmud in 7.5 years. That's how big it is. And this is something, according to what I've read online, tens of thousands of Jews practice every 7.5 years in the cycle there. And this program that was put together was introduced by Rabbi Meir Shapiro. And he was a Polish Jew, and he put it together so all Jews could participate in learning from the Talmud, not just rabbis. Now, this would mean each one that is participating in this program and in Orthodox Judaism is reading the things that I quoted to you earlier, in that Charlie here is saying that Orthodox rabbis or whoever, he's never heard anyone say anything about it. Well, why don't you think he hadn't heard anyone openly say anything about these things, these perverted things? Well, it's the same reason they didn't openly talk about it in France in the 1200s. It had to have been discovered by a convert, and he had to bring it forth, and then it was a big deal. But what I'm saying is just by this one program that they use to teach Jews the Talmud, this would mean that one page a day is being read every day of the Talmud by tens of thousands of Jews. Out loud, by the way. They read it out loud. And this is just one example. There's many others. Now, I'm not going to play any more clips from that video. You can go look it up and watch it. I'd encourage it and watch it in full. Like I said, the man speaking with Charlie Kirk said a lot of truth, but at the same time, he mixed it with things that weren't true, along with things that he didn't know what he was talking about. And he was coming across through his gestures and body language and the way he was saying things and responding, quite frankly, like a nut, which didn't help what he was trying to convey. And we need to be careful of that too. We need to be able to present things in an intelligent way. Be able to present them in a loving way, easy to digest, not dump everything on one person and say here. No, that's not right. We need to be, Well, quite frankly, we need to be like, we need to respond accurately, somewhat like Charlie Kirk does in a lot of these debates. He talks legible. He normally knows what he's talking about. He cites sources a lot of times. This man, he got up there. I'm not picking on him, but he got up there. He didn't know what he was talking about. He was looking at his phone, trying to read, but he didn't even know what the Talmud was. And he's trying to tell Charlie that these Jews believe this thing, and he doesn't even really know what it is. Was he wrong? No, he was right. But it's the way he came off, the way he presented it, made it to seem like he didn't know what he was talking about, which is not good. Now, with all that being said, I'm not playing these clips to pick on Charlie Kirk per se, because I think he was very smart. I think he was very sincere. But at the same time, I think he was very brainwashed with the so-called Judeo-Christian ethic. And that's important to point out. Now, I think he was smart and sincere, but I do think he was being used by those that would use someone like him to promote Judeo-Christianity for the benefit of the Jew, the benefit of the Israeli state. But in the last few days and weeks, I don't know for sure, but from some things that I've watched and listened to, it seems possible that Charlie was waking up a bit to things concerning the Jews in Israel in the wake of things like the Israel bombing of Qatar under a white flag, and even some of the things with like the Epstein list and things of that nature. And I won't be able to share everything on this broadcast, but one thing I want to share with you is a clip one day before Charlie's assassination, where Charlie had Ben Shapiro on his program to talk about the Israeli bombing of Qatar under a peace flag. Now, please keep in mind, Ben Shapiro, which seems to be a popular conservative figure all of a sudden in the past couple of years, he's an open Orthodox Talmudist Jew. He's not just a Jew by birth. He goes to synagogue and learns from a rabbi from the Talmud. That's what Orthodox Jews do. Now, in this clip, Charlie openly questions Shapiro and then makes the statement that perhaps since we have questioned so many of the things that the media has told us on, and he lists the things here, and they were proven wrong, perhaps we should also do the same for Israel and what the media has said about Israel. Now, compare this to 4 months prior when he seemed to be saying, let's bless the Jews unconditionally in the clips that I played for you earlier. In this clip, it seems to be like he may be saying, wait, perhaps we need to look at this again. Now, I'm not saying he did a full turn on all his Judeo-Christian ethics, so to speak, but he's obviously questioning some things, and for him to question Ben Shapiro openly on video is very interesting. A day before he was assassinated. I'm not saying anything, not insinuating anything, but it's an interesting observation. Let's go ahead and listen to the clip.
Ben Shapiro, author of Lions and Scavengers. We're going to get to that in a second. I have one or two other questions on Israel. I think it's very important for our audience to hear this, though, because there is an incessant campaign. And one thing a friend sent to me, interestingly, which is, okay, Charlie, we've pushed back against the media on COVID, on lockdowns, on Ukraine, on the border. So maybe we should also ask a question. Is the media totally presenting the truth when it comes to Israel? Just a question, that maybe we shouldn't believe everything the media says, because I know I've been conditioned to ask a lot more critical questions over the last couple of years. So, Ben, some people would accuse Israel of wanting to ethnically cleanse. Some people in the Israeli government are saying, again, it's all over the place, right? You have opinions all over. In your opinion, what would a good outcome 5 years from now be, and how does one respond to the claims of ethnic cleansing?
So ethnic cleansing, the idea, presumably, that population movement is equivalent to ethnic cleansing. I think ethnic cleansing is a term that's been fairly recently coined to describe population movement during war. And the reality is that's been ongoing for literally all of human history. The idea that Israel is, quote unquote, forcing people out of the Gaza Strip, that is not the stated policy of the Israeli government. The idea is if people want to leave, they can, but they're not being forced to leave. again, moving people out of heavily urbanized areas that are honeycombed with terrorist booby traps pretty much everywhere, is not the same thing as quote unquote ethnic cleansing. And I think that ethnic cleansing is very often used as sort of a softer form of the genocide attack, the idea being that Israel is trying to kill everyone, which of course is not true. As far as your earlier question about what we believe from the media, one of the things that I find kind of astonishing in some of the folks on the right who are highly critical of Israel is actually the lack of the lack of skepticism when it comes to legacy media. Legacy media are radically anti-Israel overall. The New York Times can certainly not be accused of being a pro-Israel outlet. It'd be very difficult to make the accusation that the Associated Press, which has worked hand in glove with Hamas for years, or Reuters, that these are wildly pro-Israel outlets, and yet when it comes to the reporting, it seems to be sort of the opposite. Ben, so the Ben, perception the legacy media is like owned by the Jews. And
I was going to say, Ben, come on. You Jews own the media, Ben. So, I mean, come on. As you could tell by all the wonderful headlines you guys get.
Well, I mean, dude, the accusation that we own the media has not prevented, the Daily Wire from employing people who radically disagree with me on all of these matters. I mean, I don't agree with Matt Walsh on foreign policy. Matt obviously is a major host over at Daily Wire, and that's just my shop. And I'm overtly pro-Israel. Right? I mean, I'm not making any bones about this. I'm a Jew and I'm a Zionist. I'm not going to pretend that to say otherwise would be absolutely silly. To suggest that some sort of atheistic Jewish person by birth who does not care about Judaism or Israel owning the New York Times means the New York Times is pro-Israel is to ignore literally every bit of coverage they have ever done for my entire lifetime.
We're running out of time here, but just last question on this, Ben. I know this might be a tougher question, but Bibi said, quote, I didn't like how he said this, I'll be honest. You can't be MAGA if you're anti-Israel. I don't like it for a couple reasons. How did you analyze that statement from Bibi?
I mean, I think that there is the ungenerous way of interpreting that and then the generous way of interpreting that. So the ungenerous way is to suggest that you have to hold a particular position on every Israeli governmental activity in order to be MAGA, which of course is not true. I mean, you can disagree from the right or from the left with Bibi's policies, and you can still be plenty MAGA. I think the idea that Bibi is putting out there is that if you are taking Hamas's side against Israel in a conflict, it is very difficult to align that with the stated positions of the Trump administration or what President Trump himself is doing right now. I certainly is true.
You cannot look. I think you can have disagreements on Israel and still be MAGA. Obviously, you should be America first. But if you're pro-Hamas, you're something darker, and we shouldn't put up with that. Ben, tell us about your important new book.
Now, it's no secret that the majority of news media or media in general, whether it be production or news or whatever, outlets are pro-Israel, pro-Jew, and owned by Jews either through their CEO or executives. This is no secret. You can search it on the internet and read all about it. You can even look at production companies like Disney and Paramount and see the anti-Christian, pro-Jewish rhetoric that they put out there. And then, what's interesting, too, is if you learn about what is in the Talmud and then you compare that to some of the stuff that Hollywood and these production companies are putting out, and then you compare that with some of the allegations with like the Epstein list and so forth and so on, you find some pretty interesting connections and coincidences. But we won't get into that right now. Now, the clip I just played, you can go watch it. Ben Shapiro, his face, he looks surprised, and he has like a how dare you kind of face when asked if we should question the media's stance on Israel. And it's no surprise. It's because one of the greatest so-called sins in America is to question the Jews or Israel. And Charlie, in this podcast, a day before he was assassinated, questioned Israel and encouraged his listeners to do the same. And I'm not saying there's any connection there, but it's an interesting coincidence is all that. I believe it's significant. Now, I'm not going to speculate. I don't know what happened. None of us will know what happened for sure. And that's one thing that we need to remember is no matter how this happened, we don't know how it happened. There's a lot of interesting facts, but we will never know the full truth. That's just how it is with things like this. When facts don't add up and conspiracy theories start throwing around, we're never going to know, unfortunately. Now, one thing we do know, and regardless of all the other things, is we do know this man was assassinated. He was murdered on video for the whole world to see, unless you think it was faked. I don't think it was faked. I think that's silly. It would be simpler to shoot somebody than to fake it. I don't understand why people would think that this was fake. But regardless of that, he was a professing Christian. He was against homosexuality. He was against transgenderism to a great degree. He was openly against communism. He was against abortion and so forth and so on. And yet he was murdered because of it. And because of this event, some Christians seem to be, at least from my observations, seem to be awoken for just a minute to the slumber that they've been in, that hey, something crazy going on in the world. Maybe I need to rethink my life, or maybe they've woken up to the fact that, hey, Christians can be shot out in public for being outspoken against evil. Hey, I didn't know that could happen. So we need to take time right now, those who are awake, and plant seeds on this fertile ground that has just appeared before us out of nowhere. Because I don't know how long it's going to be for some of these people not to fall back asleep. Our people don't have a good track record. We need to get to work. Plant fertile seed. Be open. Witness to your family and friends in a intelligent, brotherly love kind of way. You don't dump 30 years of knowledge on them. You plant slowly, in an intelligent way, in a peaceful way, trying to get them to understand. Because it's an evil world we live in. We need to get to work. Plant seeds on this fertile ground. Those out there that are listening to this program that understand Israelite identity, they need to be sharing that truth too with their brethren. Now more than ever. It's more important now than it ever has been in my lifetime, and people are willing to listen concerning the dangers and evils of Zionism and so forth and so on like they never have before. The sins of transgenderism and all this chaos in the world, people are willing to listen. We need to get to work. And those who realize the sin and dangers in our nation that are happening, they're starting to question it. So we need to get to work. We need to start sharing. We need to plant seeds on fertile ground while we have it. Not stick our head out in the sand and say, "Oh, nobody wants to listen." Well, if nobody listens, dust your feet off and go to the next person. It's time for Christians to come together in unity and start working together. We have way too many lone sheep wandering around out there that hate all the other sheep for minor disagreements. We need to work together. We need to share truth. We need to preach the gospel. We need to do these things. And we have fertile ground right now. At least it seems like it. Doesn't really matter if we have fertile ground. We're commanded to do it regardless. And we need to get to work. Well, thank you for listening to Christian America Ministries Worldwide. I've been your host, Matthew Dyer. We are broadcasting around the world on Shortwave Radio and over the internet. You can learn more about our ministry at ChristianAmericaMinistries.org and come back next week for another broadcast.
Awake, O Israel, rise from your slumber, and the truth shall set you free. From out of Zion comes your Redeemer in the year of Jubilee. Oh, hallelujah, oh, hallelujah, hallelujah. Praise Yahweh. From out of Zion comes your Redeemer in the year of Jubilee. Thou art my chosen.
You have been listening to Christian America Ministries Worldwide. If you have been blessed by this outreach ministry, please come back next week for another broadcast. And be sure to subscribe to Christian America Ministries on YouTube and Spotify. If you would like to support this ministry and help keep this program on the air, you can donate to Christian America Ministries at our website, ChristianAmericaMinistries.org. Thank you for listening.